I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because I am about to tell you a story that is going to live in your brain rent-free for the rest of the week, maybe the rest of the month, maybe, honestly, the rest of the year. I'm talking about the kind of story that makes you put your phone down for a second, stare at the ceiling, and just whisper, "She really did that." Because she did. She really, truly did. And if you have ever been cheated on, if you have ever been lied to by someone you trusted completely, if you have ever given your whole heart to a person who turned out to be living an entirely different life behind your back, then this story is for you. This one's for all of us. Now, before we get into the good stuff, and trust me, the good stuff is extraordinary, we have to start at the beginning, because context is everything. The satisfaction of this story doesn't just come from what she did. It comes from understanding exactly who she was, what she gave, what she believed in, and just how deeply and casually she was being betrayed. So stay with me, because every single detail matters here. Let's call her Jade. Not her real name, but she deserves a name, because she is the hero of this story and heroes deserve names. Jade had been dating this guy for about a year. Now, a year might not sound like forever in the grand scheme of things, but a year is significant. A year is real. A year means you've been through seasons together. You've navigated the awkward early stage. You've gotten past the honeymoon phase where everything is butterflies and perfection. You've settled into something that feels genuine and grounded. A year means you've had your first argument and made up. It means you've seen each other sick, stressed, exhausted, and vulnerable. It means you've shared things about yourself that you don't share with just anyone. A year means you've made plans, had dreams, talked about the future in that casual, offhand way that people do when they actually believe there's going to be one. A year is long enough to fall in love, long enough to trust someone completely, long enough to stop questioning whether they're really who they say they are. And Jade trusted this man. She had no reason not to. He was attentive, charming, present, the kind of boyfriend who seemed to be all in. He called when he said he would. He showed up. He made her feel chosen. And that is a specific kind of cruelty, by the way, that doesn't get talked about enough. The kind of betrayal that comes not from someone who was distant or checked out, but from someone who was actively performing love while secretly dismantling everything it was built on. So here they are, about a year into the relationship, and the holiday season arrives. And he does what people do when things are going well. He invites her to meet his family for the first time. Thanksgiving, the big one, the holiday that is basically designed to be an audition, right? You spend the whole drive over rehearsing topics to bring up, mentally running through your outfit one more time, wondering if you're going to say something weird to his mom. It's a big deal. Being invited to Thanksgiving isn't casual. It's intentional. It's a statement. It says, "I want the people who raised me to know who you are." It says, "You matter to me." It says, "I see a future with you in it." Jade said yes, packed her bags for the overnight stay, and drove to his family's house for Thanksgiving. And by every account, it went beautifully. His family was warm, welcoming, and completely genuine in the way they embraced her. His parents were kind. His relatives pulled her into conversations, made her laugh, made her feel like she belonged there. The food was incredible in the way Thanksgiving food always is, that specific combination of comfort and abundance that makes you feel like the world is soft and good. Dinner was full of laughter and easy conversation, and all the things you hope for when you're meeting someone's family for the first time. By the end of the night, Jade had every reason to feel wonderful. She probably helped clear the table, said her goodnights, and went to bed in the guest room feeling genuinely happy, genuinely hopeful, genuinely in love with someone she believed loved her back. She had absolutely no idea what the next morning would bring. She had no idea that while she was sleeping peacefully in his family's guest room, somewhere across town, another woman was also waiting to hear from him. Another woman who believed, in her own way, that she was in a real relationship with this man. Another woman who had also been chosen, also been pursued, also been made to feel like she was someone special to him. Because to him, apparently, she was. Just not in the way either of them deserved. The next morning was the kind of quiet, slow, post-holiday morning that feels almost sacred. The kind where the house smells like coffee and leftover pie, and everything feels unhurried. Her boyfriend got up and headed to the shower. Jade was still waking up, that slow, comfortable crawl back into consciousness that happens when you're in a soft bed and the world outside the blankets hasn't demanded anything from you yet. And then the phone buzzed. It was his phone, sitting on the nightstand, face up, and it buzzed once and then again and then again. Multiple notifications in quick succession. Now, Jade was not snooping. This is important to say clearly because it matters. She wasn't going through his phone, wasn't unlocking it, wasn't digging around looking for something to confirm a suspicion. The phone was right there, face up, lighting up repeatedly. And when something buzzes that insistently, you don't have to be looking for trouble to notice it. Any person, in any relationship, would glance over, and Jade glanced over. And there on the screen, from an unsaved number, just digits, no name, was a text message that read, "Babe, I miss you." Let's sit with that for a moment. Because I want you to really imagine what that feels like. You are in this man's family home. You just spent the evening meeting his parents, eating his mother's cooking, laughing with his relatives, feeling like you belong to this family in some small but meaningful way. You fell asleep feeling safe, you woke up feeling content, and then 3 words on a phone screen tear through all of that like a knife through paper. "Babe, I miss you." 3 words that don't have an innocent explanation. 3 words that don't belong to a cousin or a coworker or a wrong number. 3 words that have a very specific meaning, and Jade understood that meaning immediately and completely. There is that moment, and if you've lived through something like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where your body knows the truth before your mind is ready to accept it. Your stomach drops, your chest tightens. Time gets strange, like everything simultaneously slows down and speeds up. Part of your brain starts reaching desperately for innocent explanations, because that's what we do, that's the survival instinct kicking in, the part of us that wants so badly for it to be nothing. But another part of your brain, the deeper and more honest part, has already accepted the reality, already knows, already understands that the thing you feared, the thing you probably never let yourself think about too directly, has just announced itself in 3 words on a phone screen. Jade looked at that number, and she made a decision. She picked up her own phone, dialed the number, and waited. The call connected. A woman answered. What followed was one of the most important phone calls of Jade's life, and one of the most important phone calls of this other woman's life too. Because the thing about a man who is living a double life is that he depends entirely on the 2 sides, never speaking to each other. His whole world is built on 2 separate realities, running on parallel tracks that never intersect. And when those tracks suddenly cross, when the 2 women he's been deceiving find each other and start talking, the entire architecture of his lies collapses in an instant. The other woman didn't know about Jade at all. She had been told and had every reason to believe that this man was single. He hadn't mentioned a girlfriend, he hadn't alluded to one. He had presented himself as completely, entirely available, and then he had pursued her. Actively, deliberately, intentionally pursued her, not the other way around. He had made the first move, put in the effort, done all the things a man does when he wants someone to believe he is genuinely interested. And the timing of it was perhaps the most stomach-dropping detail of all. He had started pursuing this other woman right around the same time he and Jade had begun dating. Which meant this wasn't a later temptation. This wasn't a moment of weakness that happened after he was already in love with Jade. This was something he set in motion from almost the very beginning. A choice made consciously to be with 2 women at the same time while lying to both of them about it. They talked for a while, these 2 strangers. They filled in each other's blanks. Every piece of information the other one offered was another piece of a puzzle that had been deliberately scrambled and hidden from both of them. And by the time Jade hung up the phone, she had a complete picture. She knew exactly who this man was. She knew exactly what he had done. She knew exactly how long it had been going on. She knew that she had not been paranoid or oversensitive or wrong in any vague, unnamed feeling she might have had. She had simply been deceived by someone who was very good at deceiving people. The shower was still running. Jade set her phone down. And here is the part of the story that I think separates Jade from most people in this situation. Because most of us, and I mean this without judgment, because the emotional reality of this moment is genuinely overwhelming, most of us would fall apart at this point. The tears would come. The shaking would start. You'd want to scream or throw something or burst through that bathroom door and demand answers right now, immediately, in this second. You'd want him to see you crying. You'd want him to understand, right now, the magnitude of what he has done. That impulse is completely human and completely understandable. But Jade didn't do any of that. Instead, she did something that requires a kind of emotional control that most people simply do not have access to in a moment of acute betrayal. She composed herself. She got quiet inside. She let the storm pass through her, and then she made a plan. And when that bathroom door opened and her boyfriend walked out, freshly showered, completely unsuspecting, ready to go downstairs and have a nice family breakfast like everything was perfectly fine, Jade looked at him and smiled. A normal smile, a nothing's wrong smile. She matched his energy entirely. She gave him absolutely nothing. No red eyes, no tight jaw, no pointed silence. Just a perfectly normal girlfriend on a perfectly normal morning. She acted like everything was fine. And then, quietly, without drawing any attention to herself, she picked up her bags from the guest room and carried them downstairs with her. She set them near the front door. The family was already gathering in the kitchen and dining room, that cheerful post-Thanksgiving morning energy filling the house. His mom was probably bustling around with coffee. His dad was maybe reading something. Relatives drifting in and out of the kitchen, plates being set out, the comfortable noise of a family that knows each other well enough to exist in the same space without ceremony. Jade walked into that space. And she stood there for a moment, in the middle of this family's home, in the middle of this warm and ordinary morning, with everything they thought they knew about her relationship completely intact. They looked at her and saw their son's girlfriend, the one they'd spent the evening welcoming and getting to know. The one they probably thought was lovely and wondered if she might be around for a long time. And Jade looked back at them and she said, calmly, clearly, and with the kind of quiet devastation that is so much more powerful than rage, I just found out your son has been cheating on me. So I won't be staying for breakfast or any future meals. The silence that followed that sentence must have been one of the most complete and total silences any room has ever held. His family froze. His mother's face shifted from confused to stunned to something close to mortified. His father, whatever he was doing, stopped doing it. Everyone in that room was suspended in the same shocked stillness, processing what had just happened, trying to catch up to a moment that had arrived without any warning whatsoever. And him. Her boyfriend. The man who had spent a year lying to her face, lying to this other woman's face, constructing an elaborate double life out of deception and charm and calculated effort. He looked terrified, not remorseful, not apologetic, not devastated, terrified. Because his whole world was coming down in real time and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He couldn't fix this, he couldn't explain this away. He couldn't manage the narrative or control who knew what because the information was already out, delivered directly to the people he would have least wanted to know, by the person he had wronged. In front of everyone, Jade didn't wait for a response. She didn't want one. There was nothing he could say in that moment that she needed to hear. The time for explanations and apologies and excuses had not arrived. It had already passed, actually, because it never would have been enough. She picked up her bags. She walked to the front door. She opened it, stepped through it, and she left. She got into her own car, thank God, thank every available deity that they had driven separately, and she pulled out of that driveway. She turned onto the road. She started driving home, and she got angry, not the frantic, panicked kind of angry, the slow, building, clarifying kind. The kind that comes after the shock has settled, and the full reality of what happened has had a moment to crystallize. She was driving down the highway on the day after Thanksgiving, the world outside her windshield completely indifferent to her heartbreak. And somewhere in that drive the sadness and the devastation, and the disbelief started to transform into something sharper. Something focused. Something that looked at the situation not just as something terrible that had been done to her, but as a problem with a solution. A wrong that could, in some small but deeply satisfying way, be addressed, and her mind drifted to the furniture. Several months earlier, Jade's close friend had been preparing to move out of state. Cross-country move, new city, new chapter, and she couldn't take all of her furniture with her. Rather than deal with the logistics of shipping it or selling it, she offered it to Jade. All of it. A complete living room set and a complete dining room set. We are talking about a couch, a coffee table, side tables, a full dining table, a full set of dining chairs. Furniture that, if you went out and bought it today, would cost you thousands of dollars. Real, substantial, quality pieces that could fill an apartment and make it feel like a home. And Jade, being the warm and generous person she was, being the girlfriend who was invested in this relationship, and this man and the life they were supposedly building together, had given all of it to him. She'd arranged to have it moved into his apartment. She had watched his space transform from a half-empty bachelor situation into something that actually looked lived in and cared for. She had contributed to his comfort, his home, his daily life in a tangible and meaningful way. Because that's what you do for someone you love. You give them things, you invest in their world. You make their life better because you want to, because it makes you happy to see them comfortable. Because in your mind, you're building something together, and what's good for them is good for the both of you. And now, driving home on the day after Thanksgiving with a broken heart and a burning clarity, Jade thought about that furniture sitting in his apartment. Her furniture. Her friend's furniture, given to her, passed on by her, a gift she had chosen to share with a man who had been lying to her for a year. She picked up her phone. She called her best friend, specifically, the friend who had a pickup truck. "I need you to meet me at his apartment. Now, I want to take a moment here to celebrate this friend. Because this is the kind of friend that every single person on Earth deserves, and very few people actually have. This is a friend who did not ask a lot of questions. This is a friend who heard the tone of that call and understood immediately that something serious had happened, and that what was needed right now was not a long conversation but action. This is a friend who said yes, who showed up on a holiday weekend with a truck and the energy and the willingness to be part of something that was, at its core, completely justified and also deeply, gloriously petty. Jade still had the key to his apartment. He had given it to her months ago, back when things were good and trust was abundant, and she had no reason to think twice about having it. She hadn't given it back when she left that morning because the thought hadn't occurred to her, and also because on some level the universe was saving that detail for exactly this moment. They drove to his apartment, they used the key, they walked in. And then, methodically and thoroughly, and with the kind of focused energy that only comes from having been genuinely wronged, they started moving furniture. The couch, the coffee table, the side tables, the dining table, every single chair. Piece by piece, item by item, they carried it all out of the apartment and loaded it into the truck. It probably took a while. Moving furniture always does, but I imagine they were not short on motivation. When they were done, they stood in the doorway of his apartment and looked back at what remained. Nothing. Not messy nothing, not I just moved in nothing. Just pure, empty, echoing nothing. Bare floors, blank walls, a space that had been a home and was now just a room. The kind of empty that announces itself loudly, that makes a statement the moment you walk in, that says with absolute clarity, someone was here, someone gave this place everything it had. And they took it all back. Jade locked the door behind her. She got back in the car. She went home, and then she blocked him, on everything. On every platform, every app, every number, every possible channel of communication. She shut every door simultaneously and completely. No dramatic final text, no last words, no opportunity for him to call and explain and apologize and talk her around. Just gone. A wall of silence where she used to be. A blocked contact list where he no longer existed in her phone. The digital equivalent of walking away without looking back. And somewhere across the city, a man came home from Thanksgiving with his family. A man who had spent that morning watching his entire, carefully constructed double life detonate in his family's dining room, who had spent the drive home formulating some explanation, some approach, some way to manage the fallout. He arrived at his apartment, he put his key in the lock, he opened the door, and he walked into a completely empty room. Let's think about that for a moment, because I want to give it the appreciation it deserves. He lost everything in the same 24 hours. He lost the girlfriend. He lost the family's respect. He lost the comfortable illusion that he had everything under control. And he came home to an apartment that literally reflected all of that loss back at him in physical, spatial, unavoidable form. There was nowhere to sit, there was nothing to look at. There was just him, and the echo of his own footsteps, and the very loud and very clear message that the person he had taken for granted had taken everything with her when she left. He was a cheater with no furniture. Now, I know what you're thinking. Because if you're anything like me, you're thinking, okay, that's incredible, that's iconic, that's a perfect revenge arc with a devastating final image. And honestly, she could have stopped right there, and the story would have been complete. She had the moral high ground, the dramatic exit, the public exposure, the furniture retrieval, the block. The story was over. She won. But here is the part, the final part, the part that genuinely elevates this story from great to legendary, that takes everything and makes it something more. The other woman. Think about how easy it would have been, how psychologically understandable it would have been, for Jade to resent her. To blame her, at least partially, even knowing intellectually that she had been deceived. That's just human nature. When you're in pain, when you've been betrayed, when you're trying to figure out who to be angry at and how to direct all of that hurt and humiliation, it's easier sometimes to aim it at the stranger than to sit fully in the reality of what the person you loved did to you. We see it happen all the time. Women are pitted against each other in these situations constantly, made to compete and resent and assign blame in ways that protect the person who is actually responsible. Jade didn't do that. Instead, she reached back out to the other woman. The woman from that morning phone call, the one who had answered with no idea what was about to unfold, the one who had found out the same morning that the man she thought she knew wasn't real at all. These two women, strangers to each other until a few hours ago, connected by nothing except the lies of a man who had underestimated both of them, they agreed to meet. They met for coffee. And they talked, really talked. They went through the whole story from both sides, comparing details and timelines and moments that now, in hindsight, made a new kind of terrible sense. They filled in each other's picture completely. They saw the full shape of what had been done, not just to one of them but to both of them, and in seeing it together they robbed him of the last thing he had, the ability to control the story. There was no version of events he could spin to either of them now, because they both knew everything. And somewhere between the truth-telling and the coffee refills and the gradual, careful recognition that this person sitting across from you has been through something remarkably similar to what you've been through. Something happened that is genuinely rare and genuinely beautiful. They became friends, real friends, not we bonded over trauma but never spoke again friends, actually friends. Two women who had been unknowingly set against each other by the same man chose instead to stand beside each other. Chose connection over competition. Chose solidarity over resentment. Chose to take something that was designed to hurt both of them and turn it into something that made both of them stronger. He thought he was so clever. He thought he had it all figured out. He thought he could keep two women on parallel tracks and never let those tracks cross and just go on living in the middle of it all, comfortable and furnished and untouchable. He thought the worst that could happen was that one of them found out and was hurt. He never imagined they'd find each other. He never imagined they'd talk. He never imagined they'd become friends and walk away from his wreckage closer to each other than they had ever been to him. But that's what happened. And that is why this story isn't just a good revenge story. It's a great one, because petty revenge is satisfying, taking back the furniture is iconic, the breakfast table announcement is legendary. But the friendship is what makes this whole thing complete. That is the part that says, with absolute clarity, that she didn't just survive this. She didn't just get even. She came out the other side with something he could never have given her, built on a foundation of honesty and shared experience, and the particular kind of bond that forms between two people who have been through something hard together. He has an empty apartment and a blocked contact list and a family who now knows exactly who he is. She has a great story and a new friend. Win-win. Loser, and honestly, I think about this story a lot. Not just because the revenge is so deeply, perfectly satisfying, though it absolutely is, but because of what it says about the person Jade is. Think about everything she navigated in the span of about 12 hours. She got one of the worst pieces of news a person can receive in a relationship. She received it in the worst possible setting, away from home, overnight at his family's house, with nowhere to immediately retreat to. She had to process it in real time while being surrounded by his people, his space, his world. She had to make decisions quickly and under enormous emotional pressure. And she made every single one of them right. She kept her composure when most people would have fallen apart. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break down in front of his family. She didn't beg or plead or try to negotiate. She didn't ask him why, or give him a chance to lie to her face one more time, or let his explanations muddy the absolute clarity of what she now knew. She spoke her truth plainly and publicly, and then she walked away with her dignity completely intact. She recovered what was hers without drama, without confrontation, without a single scene. She used a key that had been given to her in good faith, and she removed items that had been given by her in good faith, and she did it quickly and cleanly, and she left nothing behind except the evidence of what he'd lost. She drew a clean, hard boundary with the block, giving herself the gift of silence and space, and the complete removal of his ability to worm his way back into her life, with excuses and apologies and the particular brand of manipulation that cheaters tend to employ when they get caught. And then, she turned what could have been one of the most isolating and humiliating experiences of her life into a connection. She reached across the wreckage and found another person in it, a person who understood in the most immediate and personal way possible what Jade had just been through. And she chose to build something with her instead of burning the whole thing down. That is not just petty revenge. That is emotional intelligence. That is self-respect in action. That is what it looks like when someone knows their own worth well enough to refuse to let someone else's betrayal define them. The couch was just the cherry on top. So if you're out there right now, in something that doesn't feel right, dealing with someone who is asking you to accept less than you deserve, sitting with a feeling you can't quite name but can't quite shake, let this story be a reminder. Not that you need to go full moving truck on Thanksgiving on anyone, but that you are allowed to take your things back. You are allowed to speak your truth plainly and then walk away. You are allowed to refuse to play small to protect someone who is never protecting you. And if you're lucky, genuinely, beautifully lucky, you might just walk away from it with a new best friend and a story this good. That's it. That's the whole thing. And I don't know about you, but I am genuinely uplifted right now. Like my faith in the concept of karma and the possibility of poetic justice has been restored in a very real and very specific way. This is the kind of story that reminds you that people who do wrong don't always get away with it. Sometimes they come home to an empty apartment. Sometimes the women they lied to find each other and become friends. Sometimes the universe, in its infinite wisdom, arranges things in a way that is so perfectly fitting, so completely right, that the only response is to sit back and appreciate it. To Jade, wherever you are, thank you for handling it exactly the way you did, for not letting him see you break, for not letting the situation make you mean or bitter or small, for reclaiming what was yours in the most literal and spectacular way possible, for choosing connection over resentment, for being the kind of person whose response to being wronged is not to become worse, but to become better and more yourself. And to the furniture, you're in a better home now. If this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're going through something like this right now, drop a comment below. You don't have to go through it alone.